Thank you so much for being here tonight. Before I get started, I don't even know the young man's name in the back of the room. But thank you for, what is it? Raphael, thank you so much for getting the computer up and running. We were dead in the water there for a few minutes, so thank you. Tonight's topic is about pride and humility. How many of you ever feel like, or maybe you don't feel like, how many of you ever been told, get over yourself? That ever happened? Not you. No way. Come on. So it's about pride and humbleness. My monitor in the front here is down, so I'm going to use, I've got the PowerPoint here, and it's also up here, so I'll do my best to try to look at you when I talk as well. But as usual, for the next 3 hours, no, I'm just kidding. Half an hour, just about a half an hour, 45 minutes maybe. I can't take any credit for the work that you're about to see. This all came from the Spirit's book, chapter 7, items 11 and 12, and it's on pride and humility. So let's jump into it. Do you think any of us are without pride or ego? Probably not, right? Some of us have more of it than others, present company excluded, right? But I'm definitely proud sometimes. I have an ego. We all do. It's something that is with us. Until we reach that level of spiritual evolution above this earthly plane, or above that upper lower category of spiritual hierarchy, we're going to have it. It just comes with the territory. The goal, obviously, is to reduce it as much as possible, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So let's jump into the slides here. In the first, in section 11 of that chapter, the question, or what we're told, is that humbleness of heart, right, the opposite of pride or ego, it's a virtue that's often neglected. It's not really cherished or looked well upon, right, in society in a lot of ways. We envy, we follow on Facebook, we go to websites, we're attracted to shows and articles about the rich and famous, or the successful, or the people with lots of material things, or with people that have egos. And we've all probably been following the presidential election. A lot of egos there, right? So it's not something that's really cherished per se by society. But the Alan Kardec, when he asked the mentors this question, right? Can you love your neighbor when you neglect this virtue, right? That's one of the questions. And the answer that he was given is, not really, right? How can you love your neighbor if you don't have humbleness of heart, all right? Because with humbleness of heart, what happens? We see everybody as equals. No difference between us. No difference between the guy I saw asking for money on the corner. No difference between the guy that's in jail for committing a horrible crime. Or, I'm sorry, falsely in prison. He didn't really do anything wrong. It wasn't his fault. But the point is, wherever we are in life, we're all equals. And we realize, because of that we're brothers and sisters here to assist, just like my flesh and blood brother and sisters, right? If they called me for anything, even though I don't always get along with them, if they needed me, I would be there for them. I would find a way to help with resources, with my time, trying to get to where they are. I would be there as best as I could. And as such, we're instructed, and we should strive to treat other people that we don't even know that are related to us as equals, as brothers and sisters. And what this does, if we have this mindset, right, in addition to humbleness, it prepares us to live compassionately. How can I look down on anybody, right, I'm dealing with, when they're a brother or a sister of mine, when I'm equal to them? They're just in a different spot, right? And it's amazing how when I prepare one of these talks, as I was editing this over the last day or two, how I've been challenged with situations where my ego and my pride were pushed, right? I've had some situations at work, some situations in my personal life, some customers, those customer service calls where you have a problem and, yeah, we fixed it. It's done. And then you show up and it's not really fixed. And you talk to somebody else and it got fixed and it's still not fixed. So there was a whole episode today for hours, it seemed, where it's done, but it was not right. So I had to really put myself in check, because I was firm, I was assertive, but I found myself almost getting aggressive and mad and angry, right? How could you do this to me? It's 2 hours of my life, right? So it's amazing how when you prepare these talks, you're reminded, or it's almost like the situations are in your face because you have to be mindful of them. So anyways, by having this humbleness of heart, we learn how to live compassionately and how to put other people on par with us as opposed to below us or above us for that matter. I have a patient who is an amazing guy, right? Successful in so many ways, but one of the most humble guys you'll ever meet. And he reminds me of this. You'd have no idea of his stature or his presence in the community with the way he treats people around him. It's really cool. So it goes both ways. We're instructed by our mentors that for inspiration, when times get tough, when we find ourselves being full of ego and pride, that it's easy, right? All we have to do for inspiration is remember the life of Christ, right? The way he lived, the gospel that he left us, the lessons that he taught us. His meekness, as it says here, was so genuine, right? Love for all and a true desire to assist. So we talked about humbleness and we talked about pride, right? Which is what? The opposite of being humble, right? When you're proud or prideful, it's the opposite. And if you look at all the problems in your life, right? At least in my life, I can say this, and I think it's common for most of us. If we look at a lot of the dilemmas that we face, right, a lot of it you could summarize by two things: the way we react to things, and usually, pride and ego are the worst enemies of our existence, and that's what they tell us in the Spirit's book. All right, pride is our worst enemy, and that what we have to remember is just as God doesn't cast judgment against us by looking at our physical appearance, nor should we cast judgment on others because they look different, or they have other things, they're in different positions in life. Because ultimately, my life, my spirit, your life, everything that God creates has this perfection destiny, right? We are going to evolve through multiple lives. We've lived many, many lives before. We're evolving as we speak, right? It's slow and steady. We're always growing. Ultimately, our destination is the same, just like our beginning, right? Simple and lacking knowledge when we were created. And we've evolved through subsequent lives as a result of our experience. They also remind us in chapter 7 that we shouldn't attribute to God anything that we've created in our proud minds, right? If you're rich, you're just as worthy as those that are poor. Yeah, if you're hungry, you're just as worthy as those that have lots of food to eat, right? You're equals. There's no difference between us in that sense. Our status, our socioeconomic status, our education, our degrees, the kind of car we drive, the house we live in, the country we live in, or who and what town you live in, who's got the better soccer team, right? Doesn't mean anything, right? We're all equals. But we brag and we're boastful and very proud of some of those things. So with our pride, what we're taught is pride repels those thoughts. It's hard to be humble. It's hard to be loving. It's hard to be compassionate when we are full of pride. It just repels that. If you're very proud and you're thinking about yourself, how are you going to give to the poor? How are you going to assist people in need, right? So I mentioned a guy that was on the side of the road, right, looking for money. And sometimes I give, sometimes I don't. But we've all probably at some point in our life given money to somebody, assistance in some way like that, monetarily. But they asked the question, have we ever shaken a poor person's hand, right? Have we ever gone out and helped them with more than monetary? And if we haven't, we should, right? It's more than money. And we may say that if we're equals, why would God have placed me so high and them so low? It's really easy to get that mindset. But we're reminded again that it's fleeting, right? What I have today in this life, right? If I were to die tonight, it would be gone. And that it's true that I may look different than you, and the guy on the street corner might look different to me, but there's no difference in our blood, right? The organs, the the material, the makeup of our body, right? The cells, the atoms, they're all pretty much identical. They're just shaped a little bit different. They're put together a little bit different. And if I happen to be well off in this life, there's a very good chance that I'm going to be destitute in the next, right? Because of choices that I might make, right? Just because I have whatever I have in this life doesn't mean it's not going with me. When I die, in my sleep one night or driving in the car someday, it's gone. It doesn't stay with me. What stays with us? You guys remember? We've talked about this before. When we pass and we cross over and have the good fortune to return one day via reincarnation, what does come with us? I think this is huge. Our essence, our spirit, our experience, our knowledge, our intellect, right? But not our money, not our status in society. Can't pay for that now and take it with you. That is definitely not eternal. It disappears with death. So the spirits, the mentors in the spirit book remind us that this thing called pride, or more importantly, this thing called humbleness, right? The more important attribute is something that we should seek daily, all right? At every opportunity. And the best way to do that is by looking honestly at reality. One way I like to do this, and I'd be lying to you if I told you I did it every night, but when I put my head on the pillow, I like to replay the day, right? And just really think about the choices I made. I put my kids down quite a bit. We have three daughters, and I'll either go to bed with the twins, and Christiani will go to bed with Gabriella, or vice versa. And what we do is we ask them to say their prayer first, and then they say, okay, your turn, Mommy, or your turn, Daddy. It's so cute. And when I pray with them, one of the things I always mention, and they ask me about it sometimes, is I thank God for the opportunities I had that day, for all the different situations I had to help someone. And then I apologize for things that I don't go into a whole lot of detail with the kids, but I apologize for any shortcomings I had, and I pray for strength and the ability to do a better job tomorrow. And that's basically what they're saying here. Let's figure out, let's assess the actions that we made. Let's be grateful for the ones that were great, right? Thankful for making the right choice. But pay attention to the stuff that we could have done better so that we can make a plan for the next day. Make sense? Because what can happen tonight when I put my head on the pillow? I mean, I wake up in the morning, right? I could die in my sleep tonight. And the point here is, I'm breathing, I'm living, but am I already buried in my own pride right now? Have I surrounded myself in my pride, like that customer service experience today? I almost lost it a couple times, and I was frustrated. They knew I was frustrated. But I was proud of myself, because 10 years ago, I would have yelled, I would have cursed, I would have screamed, and I wouldn't have stopped. I would have gotten the supervisor, then the next supervisor, and I would have written down the address of the president of the company. I would have written a nasty letter. I was a real type A, short fuse kind of guy. But I'm not like that anymore, right? I'm not perfect, but I'm making progress. So I'm proud of that. So that's one of the things I'll pray about tonight. Thanking God for the ability to have a little bit more patience. If we are, though, surrounded in this pride and already buried in it, what they advise us here is we're going to have a great deal to be sorry for and a great deal to atone for. Because guess what? If I wasn't compassionate in this life, if I haven't learned that, if I haven't been able to share that with others and be compassionate, I'm probably going to experience a lot of people not being compassionate with me next time around. That'll be a big hurdle I'll have to cross and encounter because I lack the ability to be compassionate with others. So I'm trying, but I have a long way to go. They also ask us is what were we before we became so high and mighty, right, or powerful, right? If that's where we are now, if we think we're the center of the universe, right, if we need to check ourselves, right? What were we before we got this big and powerful, right? Well, they tell us, right? Perhaps in another life, we were as low as you could get, right? We were destitute, we were criminals, we were down and out, poor, thieves. Who knows? Who knows the things we've done in the past, right? But for whatever reason in this life, we are where we are, right? Because of the choices we made. we put ourselves in this situation. And we're reminded that it's our virtue, right? Humbleness, a big one, right, is what gives us distinction. Providence, however, right? If we're living high on the hog or not being compassionate, if we're not considerate of others, providence, right? That caring attention of God is going to trip us up when we're flying really high. And the higher that we are, the harder we're going to fall. Because everyone's equal, as we've said, and all of us, all of our spirits we share the same essence, and all bodies are formed from the same matter. There's nothing different about me and Tim, except he's better looking, right? And that's the reality. Our titles and our names mean absolutely nothing, right? They stay in the grave with our body. They do not assure us bliss, right? I can't tell you how many times I've tried to find happiness in material things or in outside influences, whether that was a girlfriend, trying to be friends with the coolest guy on the football team, trying to rise to the top of a professional organization, rise to the top of a business, promotions, ranks, whatever. At the end of the day, happiness or this bliss doesn't come from material things, right? It's fleeting, it's temporary. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with doing your best. There's nothing wrong with being promoted. There's nothing wrong with excelling in your career. But if that's your only drive, if that's your only passion, if your goal is the material gain, you never get to receive this angelic bliss because it's based solely on love and simplicity. I had the very good fortune, it was quite random and not planned, but I was in Brazil several years ago, and a good friend of ours here, Alaini, was literally like 90 minutes away, maybe less, from where I was in Brazil. So my wife and I drove over to her family's house. It just happened to be in the same town as the house of an amazing medium, prolific medium by the name of Chico Xavier in Brazil. I got to go to his house, right? Amazing, right? There's a bookstore next to it, kind of a museum kind of thing. And you see this house, and this guy sold thousands of books. You know that he helped thousands of people, right? Generated all kinds of assistance. His house is so humble. And in this house, it's maybe 4 or 5 bedrooms, maybe, nice garden and what have you. But inside of this house, of all the bedrooms in the house, he had the smallest bedroom. And the only thing he had that I think maybe was his addiction, maybe it was his vice, were his hats, right? There must have been 40 hats in this room hanging on the wall, right? But there was no sign of any material possession of what we would consider opulent or excessive. He did have a lot of hats, I will say that. But it was just amazing to be in this man's house, knowing the books that I've read that he channeled, and the messages he shared with me that have touched me. And then I'm in his house, and you just see that he didn't just channel and talk the talk, right? He walked the walk every day. He's very humble. So I was impressed. It was very touching at the time and still is today. So that being said, what do they tell us to do, right? What's the advice, right, to get over our pride, right? They tell us, suffer injustice. Let your enemies, That's all right. I'm going to wing it.
What do you mean?
Wing it like fly by the seat of my pants. I'm on the tightrope with no safety. Maybe I can do this. They tell us to suffer injustice. Let people hurt you. Don't let them hurt you. You can protect yourself. But when they hurt you, when they do something bad to you, how many of you have been hurt by someone? Not physically, but somebody just did you wrong. Blah, right? We've all been hurt. It's okay. Turn the other cheek in innocence. Hey, Fernanda. Turn the other cheek. Be indulgent towards their faults. Don't condemn them. Don't seek revenge. Don't put in this whole plan of action to get even with them, right? Because all you're doing is perpetuating the negative situation. What this does is when you're able to turn the other cheek, when you're able to pray for your enemies, right, which Christ taught us, right? Pray for your enemies, love your enemies, right? He didn't say invite them to dinner and name your firstborn after them. He said love them. What does that mean, love your enemies? It simply means that people will do you wrong. They will hurt you. Their actions against you can only impact you if you let it, right? I mean, there's things, collateral damage for things they do. There might be monetary issues or reputation issues, but ultimately, whatever they did cannot impact you or hurt you if you approach it with compassion and peace. Pray for them. Don't plan their demise, and do your best to pray that they overcome whatever made them do this to you. Make sense? They go on to say that as long as your conduct is clean, right? If you live your life clean, being humble, doing your best to serve and help others, it's not gonna stick on you. God's gonna reward you with by withstanding those offenses you suffer. So simply be humble, and if you have faith in God, and faith also in the fact that, remember, a lot of the situations that we're in right now in this life, right? It wasn't this predetermined destiny, right? It was the outcome, the effect of choices you've made previously. Anything we're facing right now, right? We kind of created, right? Because we have made choices at each moment of this life, previous lives, and we're exactly in the situation that we've created. So whatever we're facing is an opportunity to grow and evolve. And by being humble and not attacking, we're going to grow. The great thing here to remember is that Christ, although he walked the earth over 2,000 years ago, right? He left us his doctrine, right? The gospel, the good news, the New Testament, right? We have the gospel according to Spiritism is yet a third level of interpretation on this. And throughout all of those texts and all those examples, he gave us examples of all the virtues, right, to live by. He gave us the greatest example of which to emulate. But what do we do so often? We disregard them. We ignore them, right? So often we just throw them to the curb. If we go back to the Old Testament, they remind us in section 12 of chapter 7 that, remember then it was about false gods and creating altars and sacrifices, right? And in the Spirit's book, in the gospel, they compare this to, in our time, we don't slaughter chickens or sacrifice sheep or build altars necessarily. But we do in the sense that our desires, our passions, our vices, our greed, right? Those are all altars and things that we build, just like they did 2,000-3,000 years ago. We're doing the same thing today with some of the things that we do. So we're reminded that even though it's different, there's still a golden calf necessarily in our lives as we build these needs based on material want. The gospel they go on to tell us reminds us to wake up, right? Just wake up. When you get caught in that trap of being prideful, of being materialistic too much, putting what pleases your eyes before what's good for your soul, they remind us simply that we're assisted at all times. We're surrounded by spirits, right? In this room with us tonight, there's 30 people maybe? There's a lot of spirits that have joined us. They come every week, right? In need for education just as much as we are. And we bring some of those folks with us. Some of them come on their own accord. But we're surrounded at all times by those that can help us or hurt us, right? And we can vibrate our energy. We can raise our energy or lower our energy by the things we think, the things we say, or the things we do, right? So the better we try to live, the better we elevate ourselves. We're going to surround ourselves with positive energy, positively intent spirits that are there to help us. And we can listen to them. We can hear them. We can follow that intuition that we feel and make the good choices as opposed to the bad. And the best way to do that, they tell us, is to be generous. I'll be collecting donations on your way. I'm just kidding. Not money, all right? Not money. Be generous with your time. Be generous with your love. Be generous with your compassion, even for those that hurt you, right? Don't lash out. Don't strike back. Don't plan revenge. Be loving, and most importantly, say do good quietly, right? Don't let your right hand see what your left hand does when you're doing charity, right? Don't write a big check for a charity and then, get on the stage and hold it up and brag about it. Just do what you can quietly, right? Between you and the person you're helping. And they say if we do this, that little by little, we're going to tear down the altars that we've erected in our hearts based on pride. If we live by the teachings of Christ, right, we're going to stop questioning the goodness of God, because it's going to be more and more evident each moment that we're surrounded by God's greatness, God's goodness, right? That regardless of the adversities that we're facing, right, through whatever it is, health, wealth, emotions, regardless of whatever pain we're going through, that if we can keep ourselves living right, doing our best to be those things, right? Loving, compassionate, generous, that we're always going to see the beauty in the world, the goodness of God. And this, they tell us, will make our hearts gentle and mild. And you'll find the path filled with laurels placed in front of you to celebrate your return to the road of goodness, compassion, and love. Sounds so easy, yeah? We're all going to drive really nice on I-4 when we leave here tonight, right? What's a big part of this? What do you think they tell us for some advice? How do we get closer to that? Stop complaining, right? It's right there in the book with big print, right? Stop complaining about your afflictions. If you're sick, don't get me wrong, you can talk about it, but don't complain about it. They remind us that when we do this, right, when we complain about those things, all we're doing is heaping them on ourselves. We're compounding it. Think about something that's happened to you that's bad. You don't have to tell us, but the event happened once, right? But every time you complain about it, every time you fight with it in your heart, every time you think about it, every time you want to seek revenge for something that somebody bad to you, all you're doing is reliving it. The event happens once, but every time it's like you're just cutting yourself again, just hurting yourself. You're reliving it. It only happened once, but thousands of times you've probably played it back in your head. And there's tons of research, MRI studies and the brain activity. And I'm not smart enough to explain it to you, but my understanding of these studies when I read them is the memory of them, the thinking of them is just as strong as living through it, right? So every time you think about it, you're living through the pain again. So they tell us here that pride is the root of all our problems. We said that probably 20 minutes ago, right? But it's so strong, they mentioned it twice. Pride is the root of all our problems. And what we need to simply do is devote ourselves to overcoming it. Otherwise, we will perpetuate its harmful effects. So we have to do our best at all times to reduce it. And they told us already how to reduce it. Compassionate, kindness, goodness, all of those things. Try to do that every day. Seek humbleness daily. And another way they say that you can accomplish this and try to make it your mindset is to cherish the godly person, right? We all know those people. There's people here in this room right now, right, that don't talk a lot. They don't make a big presence with their actions, but they're here every week. They put out the signs. They prepare the coffee, right? They help clean up. Or they're just sitting in the room, right, watching the slide, and they might ask questions at the end. They find some way to help. Those are great examples, right? But nobody makes a big show, right? As opposed to celebrating the celebrity, as I mentioned before. How often are you in line at Publix, right, and see the gospel according to Spiritism on the rack, right? It's not there, or a Bible on the rack, or the biography of Mother Teresa on the rack. No, what do you see? You see the Inquirer, you see Star. What's the other ones? You guys know them. Us, People. Did I miss any? You know what I'm talking about. How many of you flip through them just to see what's going on? How many of you buy them? Don't tell me. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. So never forget that this state of affairs, right, of where we are celebrating celebrity, right, and excess and moral decay, if you will, it's just a sign of the times in the sense that this state of affairs is simply evidence that there is some moral decay and decline in society, but we can rise above it. When pride reaches an extreme, it indicates an imminent transformation for the divine justice to correct the proud, right? And how does that occur, right? I can remember a time in my life when I was flying high, right? Everything was going right. I was making money. I had a great relationship. You name it, right? I had it. Well, guess what? In a matter of a very short period of time, right? Because I wasn't really living the good life, right? I wasn't living the spiritual life. It's all materialistic, right? And for those standards, my life was incredible, right? I was broke not too long after that. I hit this pinnacle. I lost it all, right? I wasn't on the side of the road, but I had to start over from scratch. Done that twice in my life. And sure enough, when it happened to me, like I think what they're trying to describe here, it's because when I got away from what was good, what was humble, and what was compassionate, it was all about me. And the people around me, they mattered, but not the way they should. They mattered to how I could achieve as a result of working whatever I was working. Not proud of that, right? I'm happy in the sense that I've overcome that and don't do that anymore. But that's a good example of just another guy just like you when they talk about crashing, right? I can think of 2 examples in my life when that happened. And it's because I got away from the real stuff, which you can't see, but it's right here. I swear. Because what they tell us is correction always comes. You can fight it all you want, right? You can avoid it, you can ignore it, but you're always going to correct. It's the law of progress. There's no way around it. We are destined for perfection and becoming a perfect spirit, Christ-like perfection. We're all going to get there one day. It's going to take me a lot more lives than some of you because I made a lot of mistakes, right? But we all make mistakes. But we're all destined for that. So don't beat yourself up. Try to avoid selfishness because it's going to ruin everything that you touch. And then they ask humanity. They say humanity is asked to renew your courage. God has given us a powerful cure for our sorrows. Open your eyes to the light, right? So no matter where you are, no matter how far away you are from the goal, right, and how bad you might feel about things you've done, right, you can change right now. You can devote your next moment to making a good choice. And all it is trying to string more and more of those together on a regular basis. And when you fall, get back up and try again. Because the greatest among us is the humblest of the humble. The most loved in the afterlife is he who has loved his or her fellow humans. It's not what you achieved materialistically. It's not what you've achieved in awards and letters and commendations and what have you. It's how have you treated your fellow man. So we all have things that we're going to have to atone for. But we're all growing, and we all have the ability to put it behind us and grow. They go on to tell us that the powerful on earth, right, who abuse their authority will find themselves reduced to a position of obedience to their own servants. So if you're in control of people, if you're responsible for people, you're a manager, you're a business owner, you're somehow connected to the welfare of a lot of other people, right, or just a few other people, your actions towards them, right, are very important. It's not just about you. It's about how you impact their life. And it's how you deal with them. And if you make great choices, or if you don't make good choices, I should say, you're probably going to experience that to a stronger degree next time around, or at some point, because you've got to overcome that. And what's the best way to experience how not to do something, right? What happens with the kids all the time when they're little? How do they learn not to touch the stove? They get too close, right, and they feel the heat. I used to work with a guy that said you've got to experience bitterness to enjoy the sweetness, right? So I think that's apropos in this situation. So as we wrap up here, they remind us that there's 2 siblings, right, in life. Humbleness of heart and love. They go hand in hand. You can't be humble if you're not loving. You can't be humble if you're full of pride. You can't experience love and give love if you're full of pride or ego. They cancel each other out. So you have to try your best to be humble as much as possible and to be loving as much as possible. And not just not just to others. I know we're talking about how we interact with others, but don't forget to love yourself. How many of us carry around pain from the past, guilt from the past, right? I'm sure most of us. Love yourself. God has got beautiful things prepared for us. Everything we need to survive, to thrive, is right here in front of us. Right? My sister likes to say, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Right? And that's true, I think, to a certain degree. But even if it does kill us, right, the way we deal with it at the moment, the way we deal with the people that inflicted it on us, our thoughts for them, our either lack of love and care and hope for them to get better, or our desire and our compassion for them, right, and forgiveness for those that have offended us. That sentiment, that action, right, is the real thing. And impacts us, not just in this moment, but in the future moments that we experience. And it's by keeping these things hand in hand, that's the best means for us attaining grace, right? And to receive grace, we have to give it, right? We have to treat other people with grace. And then finally, I think this is my favorite, probably my favorite verse, or favorite lesson that Christ gave us. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. That's self-explanatory, huh? Do we do it most of the time? If we stop and think about it, I think we really do, right? I think we have to think about it sometimes. I think we get off course. But I think that one, to me, is easier than the second piece to this.
So if you face trial with pride and an issue like that, you seek serenity and then ask for apology?
Sure. I mean, we're all going to react with pride and ego to some degree, right, until we evolve more, right? Or we're going to do it less and less as we grow, just like my own personal examples. I'm much less like that today than I was a decade ago. It's going to happen. But when it happens, you can apologize. You can do your best to correct the mistakes or the feelings that you hurt. And then even if you can't fix that, you can devote your energy to not doing it again. Make sense? And then the second piece of this is to love. It says this is the first and greatest commandment, right? So we all know from the Bible there's 10 commandments, right? But Christ breaks it down into 2. That was the first. He says, and the second is love your neighbor as yourself. That's hard for me, right? I could say it. I even try to do it. But it's harder for me to do that sometimes, or has been harder for me in the past than the first one, right? I think that's our biggest challenge. And this whole talk about pride and humbleness really comes to that. If we can truly be compassionate towards others, devote time and energy to helping others, putting ourselves second when it comes to those types of things, then we're really working on that. And I'm getting better at that, right? But it's still harder for me at times not to do that. It's easier not to do that sometimes. Don't get me wrong, I'm not out to hurt anybody, right? But do I really love that guy that is suing me right now for a business issue, right? It's hard to love that guy, right? Because
You don't have to take him to dinner.
I'm not. It's right. I'm not taking him to dinner, but I'm helping my lawyer pay for his kids' college. So in that sense, I'm doing something good, right? But my point is, regardless of the adversity, whether I was right or I was wrong, he's right, I'm wrong, there's a lot of angst to that kind of stuff, and it's easy to be mad. And I'm proud of myself in this regard that what I would have done 10 years ago, I'm not doing today. Fair enough? That's all I'm going to say about that. Who said that? Forrest Gump. That's all I have to say about that. So I'll leave you tonight simply with what my takeaway from this. And I'll try to be brief. You're loved more than you realize, I think. You're surrounded by peace, surrounded by assistance. just have to break down that barrier that we build up. And that's our ego, that's our pride, and that's our desire to want to do it all ourselves, fix everything ourselves. There's a saying in 12-step programs that I've been a part of in the past. Just give it up to your higher power, right? Give it up to God. Wherever your belief is in that, just give it up. And I think in some ways, that crosses all doctrine. It crosses all philosophy. Give it up to God, right? Trust in God, just like he says here, right? Love the Lord with all your God, with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. Give it up. Just love him and know and trust that he's provided everything for you to succeed. And then simply, at every opportunity, do your best to love the person to your left, to your right, in front of you, and behind you, regardless of your differences. Find love for them every day. And ultimately, try to love yourself each and every day a little bit more and more. Did I ever tell you about mirroring? I think I talked about that once, right? Try looking. I did this. I shouldn't say I did this. My wife did this. Yeah, I'll tell you in just a second. Looking into a mirror and talking to yourself. And please don't repeat this to my daughter. She probably wouldn't want me to share it. She's only 8 years old. She's still a little fragile. Okay. But we did this with Gabriella a couple nights ago. It just came up. My wife, who's a lot more amazing than I can ever imagine. I have to pinch myself sometimes because she's just awesome inside and out. She came up with this idea after reading about this. She bought these little compact mirrors, that everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but people that use makeup or they just want to look at themselves, right? I guess a lot of little girls have them. She bought these mirrors for them. And she had Gabriella look in the mirror and say, Gabriella, talk to yourself. Say, I love you, Gabriella. I'm strong. I'm beautiful. 2, 3, 4, 5 things. That little girl, right? And I'm going to start crying. That little girl, by the time we got to the second or third one, there were tears in her eyes. 8 years old. And she had a hard time telling herself that she loves herself. An 8-year-old, innocent, beautiful, loving girl, right? She had a hard time with it. So what does that say about us? Our self-esteem. It starts young, and I'm 49 years old, and I'm choking up about it, right? I tried it. It's hard to look in the mirror and tell yourself you're amazing and that you love yourself. But I'm going to try more and more each day to really believe that when I say it to myself. And if I can fill myself with that love that God has for me, if I can feel it and feel it and believe it, I'm going to be able to share it with you and the world around me. So thank you for your time, your patience, and your attention. Thank you so much.